Hi there guys, got a real quick video here for you today on a small chronograph from AliExpress. We're going to be taking a look at it and I'm going to be sharing how I've been getting on whilst using the unit itself. Now, I will mention that the unit looks exactly like the Air Force muzzle mount chronograph, but this one doesn't have any of the laser engravings on the body and it is a little cheaper. So it's an unbranded version of it, but I'm pretty sure that they're made in the same factory. Before we start, don't forget on the 27th of July, Pete's Airgun Farm is going to be hosting a airgun related boot sale, so that's next week. If you're interested in that, you can just pause the video and read the little flyer. With that said, the chronograph itself is nice and clean. The outer body is aluminium. The thread in the end here is 1/2 inch UNF, so you can screw that directly onto a barrel or a shroud if you want to. It houses an onboard battery which can be charged via the USB-C port here, and the battery life seems to be very good. I was using this device for around 2 or 3 hours on Saturday, and the onboard battery indicator didn't move off max. The chronograph itself is an infrared design, so it has 2 sensors in this tube here, one at the front and one at the back. And the way these devices work is it measures the time it takes for the pellet to reach the front sensor in relation to the back one. Once it has the time that it takes the pellet to travel through the 2 sensors, it can work out how fast the pellet is going on average. So far, I've not had any misreadings or errors with the chronograph. It's performed pretty much each and every time, and I've had no major issues with it. The only other thing I'll mention before we get into more detailed things is that the hole on the inside is 10mm, so you could probably use this anything up to 30 cal. I don't have a 30 cal to test this device on, but the hole through the center is 10mm, so you should have a little bit of clearance there. Next up, we're going to be installing the chronograph onto the end of the rifle, and before we do that, I just want to show you this ring at the back of the unit here. What this allows you to do is time the chronograph in relation to your shroud, so you can align the screen with the side of your rifle if you so choose. And in my testing, it should work on rifles with a 28mm shroud or larger. But what we're going to do is get the unit screwed onto the shroud, so as you can see, the chronograph is tight, but obviously the screen is up here. We want it to be nice and easily readable. So what we're going to do is unscrew the chronograph until it's in the correct position, then tighten this ring here up to our shroud. And there we have it. The chronograph's nice and secure and it's not going anywhere. If your shroud is smaller than 28mm or you're just screwing it onto the barrel, you will just have to screw the chronograph up until it's tight. Right then, on this side we have the screen, which when the chronograph is in use will display the pellet speed along with the power of the rifle if you've entered the correct pellet weight. The functions themselves are controlled by these 2 buttons here, and you do get a full instruction sheet in the box when you buy the chronograph, but to turn it on we're just going to be pressing and holding the bottom one. Now we'll say the flickering that you're seeing on the camera there is just a result of the shutter speed of the camera. In real life, the display is solid. Right then, on the screen you can see we have the feet per second along the bottom, the pellet weight along the top, and then the power of the rifle just next to that. The power is currently reading in joules, and the speed is in feet per second. If we wanted to change these, we'd simply need to press one of these buttons once. So the bottom one controls the speed, and you can change it from feet per second to meters per second. We're going to keep it on feet per second, and then for the power at the top here, we have joules, then foot-pounds. So joules and foot-pounds, we're going to be leaving it on foot-pounds. To enter your pellet weight, you just push and hold the top button, and then we can enter the bullet mass. The top button controls the digit, so it selects the digit, and then to change the digit, we simply push the bottom one. You can scroll through 0 to 9. So we'll just put it on 5. Or 6 for now. Then we can press and hold the top one, and that sets the pellet weight up there. I will mention the pellet weight is in grams, not grains, so it's this number here, not this number here. One nice thing about this chronograph is that you can record shot strings on the device itself without having to connect it to an app. To get into the historical data, you press and hold both buttons at the same time. And as you can see here, we enter our shot string. You can scroll through the numbers by just simply pushing the up and down arrows. So as you can see there, we've got a few shots. And at the moment, I've got about 83 recorded on this device here. But that's quite a nice feature, as you could do sort of a simple 10-shot string without having to connect the chronograph to any external units. I will mention that it's not possible to see things like averages or feet per second spread on the device itself. This is simply a speed readout. To delete the data, you can just push and hold the bottom one. Then it gives you the option to clear data, yes or no. Top one is yes, bottom button is no, so we're just not going to delete the data at the moment. To get out of that, you can simply push and hold the top button, and we return back to the main menu. You can also flip the screen, so the display orientation of the screen can be flipped. And that's handy if you want to read the chronograph from the other side. To do that, you press and hold the two buttons for roughly 1 second. And as you can see, the display is flipped, and when the display is flipped, the buttons are also flipped. So this is now the bottom button, and this is now the top button. To flip it back, it's nice and simple. Press and hold the buttons for 1 second, and there we have it. Right, the next thing I want to talk about is the calibration and the accuracy of the chronograph. So when I first bought the chronograph and used it for the first time, it was a few feet per second out from my master scan chronograph. So this is the unit that I test all my rifles through, and that's simply because it's self-calibrating and very, very accurate. Although as you can see here, it's a little bit of a pain to use as you have to shoot through the device and make sure that you're nice and in line and everything like that. This chronograph here is a lot easier to use, but it was running about 10 feet per second low, or the readings on the chronograph were 10 feet per second low as compared to the scan chronograph, this one here. That isn't a problem though, as you can calibrate the readings on the chronograph itself by simply pressing and holding the two buttons when the chronograph is off. So as you can see here, we have set scale, and this allows you to calibrate the chronograph. What I had to do is just keep adjusting the value on the side here until I got the same reading on this chronograph as I did on my scan. If I'm honest, it took about 10 minutes and really wasn't a big deal. As you can see here, I'm at 101.5% of the original readings, and now when comparing back to back between these two chronographs, they're pretty much identical. Sometimes you do get 1 or 2 feet per second difference between the two units, but on the whole they're pretty much identical. The other thing I will mention is that you don't have to set this every time. Once you set and save by just pushing the top button here, it saves it in the chronograph and you never have to touch it again. So it's sort of like a one-time setup thing. Next up, I just wanted to get you a little bit of range footage from using the chronograph. And here we have the chronograph compared to the one on my Daystay Alpha Wolf. We're using the app to view the figures, and as you can see, the readings are a couple of feet per second different, but the chronos themselves are slightly different distances away from the end of the barrel, so some deviation is expected. The device is consistent though, and very similar to what we experienced with the Nate Chronie. The other thing that I'll mention is that the device itself did not majorly affect my point of impact. It did drop very slightly, although I didn't notice any change in accuracy when using the chronograph. Right then, next thing I wanted to do is just give you a quick look at the application. Now the device itself, when it's powered on, does connect to the application via Bluetooth. So as you can see there, it connected straight away. And then if we were to take a shot using the chronograph, it would read on the application. Now the app itself is pretty basic, but it does have a few nice features. So you can save shot strings if you want to. So we've got one here that we did for the video test. We can select that, then open it using the button on the bottom here. And as you can see there, it's got all of our readings. If you take a look at the readings here, you can also change the units from joules if you want to by just tapping the units that you want. It's a little annoying if I'm honest, but it does give you that option. The other thing I mentioned is that if you swipe left, you can get a number of averages and sort of information, that sort of thing. Although I will mention there is no way, or I can't see a way at least, of changing the unit so it's stuck in meters per second rather than the feet per second that I would like. Apart from that, if you wanted to edit the shot string directly, you just need to push on the number. So say we wanted to remove shot number 4, click on shot number 4, delete that, and that would be removed from the shot string itself. So if you had a dodgy pellet or used the wrong pellet in testing, you could remove that reading from the list. It does also have a voice mode, so when the speaker at the bottom here, it will read things out as you take a shot, but I like to keep that off as to not bother the other people at the range. You can also do some quite cool things within the application itself. So on here in the Bluetooth settings, we have remote shutdown, which if we push that, would automatically switch the chronograph off. We can also read the data, so if we push read data, it will load all of the data that's currently saved on the chronograph onto our phone. So that's quite handy if you've got a fairly good shot string done on the chronograph itself and you want to read that information. And then if you don't want it, you can just delete it from the end there. I will say deleting it off the application doesn't delete it from the chronograph. That data is still there. So as you can see there, we have 83 shots still registering on the chronograph. With that said, that's pretty much all for the app. Right then, so is it actually any good? In my opinion, this is a lightweight, convenient, and once it has been calibrated, accurate little chronograph, perfect for chucking in the range bag. The readouts on the side here make it nice and convenient to use even without a phone, and whilst the phone app is very basic, it does get the job done, and if you wanted to do long shot strings, you would be able to do that. I would like to see a few upgrades and a few more features to the app itself, such as a graphing feature and a way to sort of view the averages without having to view them in meters per second. But I don't have any major complaints on how the chronograph itself works. For me though, the big benefit of a system like this is that you can just screw it on your barrel, read the feet per second off the side. No faffing around with a mobile phone or setting a chronograph out on a tripod, trying to shoot through it nice and straight. You can just screw it on, check your feet per second, and quickly and easily read the readings. With that said, that's pretty much going to do it for this particular video, so thank you very much for watching. I hope it's been interesting or useful, and we'll see you in the next one.